Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me at benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcast because People of Distinction is a nationally and internationally syndicated show because of listeners like you. Our shows are available across all major podcast distributors as well as YouTube. And if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. We appreciate the support. Continue to like and follow and sit back and strap in because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Ronald F. Jackson. And we're going to be discussing his amazing book, Let's Get Focused: Suggestions for Improving America. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and a whole host of other places. Head on over there today, pick up your copies, and get lost in this amazing book. Now, before we go any further, I want to quickly point out the fact that Ron was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best publishing firms in the business. People you already know, talking about Citi of Books. So for my writers out there who have gone through their process and now you need help moving the book you just developed, well, look no further than Citi of Books, people, because this is exactly what they specialize in. Now, you're going to want to head on over to citiofbooks.com and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Ron here on the line. People, right there in the subtitle, man, ain't no beating around the bush. It's hitting it right on the head. You have a clear understanding of what we are discussing today. And when I tell you I am thoroughly looking forward to this discussion, understand that I am thoroughly looking forward to this. I have never been one to get overly political, right? I have my discussions with those around me. And of course, as anyone that, should be interested in this country, right, and its improvement, I have my opinions. Well, people, it doesn't take a rocket science to understand that there is something wrong with the current state of our country from a political standpoint. This is such a valuable discussion to have because it goes much, much further than Democratic or Republican. Here's the thing, people. I don't care where you fall politically. I don't care who you voted for in the previous election. I mean, listen, again, I have my own opinions on it, but you are exercising your right as an American citizen to do just that. And that's totally fine. What I do understand and what I will say is that regardless of whether or not you are Democratic or Republican, there is a severe issue within our political climate where not only are we divided, we are no longer conversing. And, the side of me that is a bit of a conspiracy theorist feels like, well, that is a plan that has been implemented, Benji. There is a reason for this much division. That'll be for the next podcast. We're going to keep it honed in on this one. But what we need to do, and this is why a book of this magnitude is so important, Ron is addressing major issues within our political system, within our governmental system. And again, you may not necessarily agree with everything that he has to say, but the one thing that you cannot dispute is that there's a problem here that needs to be addressed. And I can go on a tangent for hours. Believe me, I could. I'm very verbose. I could do it. I'm not going to, though. So let's go ahead and let's start this conversation. Ron, first and foremost, man, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great, and I appreciate you having me on. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
To follow up on what you were saying, I really think a lot of our problems kind of fall into several buckets. Mm-hmm. First of all, there's always been a group of people in the country. Not not good, not bad, but they have an opinion.
Yeah.
But their opinion is that the government needs only to do defense, and that's protect property rights, and that's pretty much it. They
Yeah.
should not do things to help individuals to improve the lives of the individual citizens. There's another group of people that basically think the wealthy are the smartest and most worthy among us, and they should run the show. And you might see some hints of that with the new cabinet appointees that are coming up on this next administration, but that's a separate discussion. And then there's others that feel that some of our citizens, they just do not view them as equal and deserving of full citizenship rights, and at every turn. And it really doesn't matter how educated they are or how many law degrees they have. They try to find every avenue to, curtail the political influence of those that they don't think are worthy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of as I see it, kind of why we continue to have these problems. Of course, our Supreme Court didn't help us years ago when they basically equivocated free speech and money. If you think about it, inherently they have said a guy with more money is entitled to more speech. And that cannot have been what the founders were originally intending, even though they were property, fairly wealthy people themselves.
Yeah.
But if you look at their words, strictly by their words, they probably didn't really intend that, or else they didn't mean what they said. And that wouldn't be the first time, though. Yeah.
Ron, listen, man, I'm right there with you. And one interesting thing that you brought up, one of the first things that you said was, one of the things that the government believe in, or they really only care about, you mentioned defense. And whoo, my goodness, man, what a button you hit there. Because interestingly enough, the Pentagon just failed their 7th audit in a row when it comes to the Department of Defense, which is absolutely insane to me. Because listen, people, if I were audited and for the 7th year in a row I failed my audit, I'd probably be in prison right now. I don't see how I'd be able to continue walking around. And like I said, that's a rabbit hole you can dive into. But look, that just shows the problem, the issue that we have.
Right. Have you ever ridden the subway from Washington out to the airport, the Washington area airport, Reagan? Well, there is a stop called Pentagon City. And at that location, all of these defense contractors, not all, but a great many of them, have these offices and huge buildings, and they're right there adjacent to the Pentagon. So they can rush over there and lobby for whatever weapon system or whatever they want the Pentagon to fund and do the next day. And that kind of gives you a indication of what kind of power and what kind of money is being expended.
Well, listen, we're definitely going to touch up on money in politics here today, because I know that is a big, big problem and is also another hot discussion. Before we go there, though, let's start off first and foremost at home base, focusing here on the book. Ron, in your book, you choose 11 amendments specifically, and I'm curious about that. First and foremost, how did you prioritize which issues to address?
I basically thought of, some of the obvious ones. I mean, I think most people would say that there needs to be some clarification on the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
I mean, only the most strident people would say, no, it's perfect as it is. But it's quite funny. They always overlook the first line of the Second Amendment and they focus only on, not infringing on the right to bear arms.
Right.
They don't mention anything about, free state needing to have a well-regulated militia and what that means and what the context of that is. Things like term limits. I mean, we've talked about this forever for congressmen and senators. Now, we have it on the president, but, some of these, hate to say it, some of these senators, they basically occasionally have to roll them out in a wheelchair and prop them up to take a vote.
Absolutely.
And, I just think that we have new ideas, and new blood would give us a better handle on what country is speaking at the current time, rather than have these people stay in there for years and years. And also, the longer you stay in there, there's a high likelihood you might have set up some corrupt and nefarious activities that we might want to avoid going, down those roads.
Yeah.
So there are some things that were obvious, and then there's these other things, like voting. I mean, we just had an election, and a couple of states, it took almost a week to have the results completed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that in the modern era, with all the technology we have, that is insane. So we put some stipulations in there for, hey, you got to basically do your vote count and have it completed within 5 hours of the polls close, and not have this thing drag on and on and on. It's just some of these things it seem basic, at least to myself. And then there's the what I mentioned before is voting. You may know that since the 1800s, we probably had about 3 different civil rights bills, including the one in 1965.
Uh-huh.
But you would think that here we are in 2024, and people are still coming up with schemes and methods to prevent others from voting.
Yeah.
To hinder their voting, to get them off the rolls. And, at some point we have to just put our foot down and say, this is it. This is going to stop now. It will not happen again. And a formal amendment that gets into the weeds a little bit and a little bit specific about things they can and cannot do, I think would go a long way to making that happen. Not to say that they won't try different things, but with such an amendment, I don't think there could be any doubt about what the intent was and what the intent of those who try to violate it is.
Yeah. Ron, listen, man, I'm right there with you. I love what you're discussing. People, the book is called Let's Get Focused, and that is exactly what we need to do. We need to focus in here. Ronald F. Jackson is the author that is bringing it to your table. And like I mentioned, it's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's a lot of other places. This is a discussion that we couldn't possibly tackle it all in such a short time frame, people. This is an ongoing discussion. But as I mentioned, not only is the book informative, not only is it powerful because of what he is suggesting, but really where I see the most power being given is just in the creation of conversations. Because when we talk about this book, like I mentioned at the top of the show, where you fall politically and what you believe in is really second to the main focus here of being able to carry on a conversation. It's interesting. I was talking to someone recently, and we were having a similar conversation about politics, about where we currently are in the country. And, I made the comparison to, it's kind of like any relationship you have with your significant other. The only way you have that successful relationship is through effective communication. If you are not communicating effectively, and I'm not talking just to say some words. I'm not talking about listening to the other person just to wait for them to finish speaking so that you can just go and give your response. I'm talking about effective communication where we truly are listening to one another and offering our perspectives. Maybe it was always like this, and when I was younger, I just wasn't paying attention as much. But it seems to me that we've gotten to a place in society, we've gotten to a place in our political climate where we are so divided, we no longer want to listen to others. Like, I know people in my circle that have family members that listen, again, not to make this political, because at the end of the day, like, I don't care. I have my own opinion about it, but I don't necessarily care. You are exercising your right to vote. But I know people that have truly disconnected with members of their family because of the fact that they voted for Trump in the previous election or in earlier ones, or even vice versa, where people did not want, and they're so staunchly against Trump in the Republican Party. People, how insane is that? But because of a political perspective, you want to alienate another person, and more specifically, alienate somebody of your own family because of their political views. If you can't see the problem with that, there's an issue. We should be able to coexist. Right. And regardless of who you voted for, man, we can still carry on a conversation. What is happening here, Ron?
That's right. Remember when Benjamin Franklin was leaving the Constitutional Convention, and he was asked, what kind of government did you give us? And he said, a republic if you can keep it. And what you just said, just like a good relationship, democracy takes work.
Yeah.
You have to be involved with it. And again, like you said, everybody's entitled to their opinions. People have different perspectives, and it comes from different life experience. And, everybody's perspective may not be, so to say, the correct perspective as you might see it, but they have reasons for feeling the way they do. And what's important is to talk about facts and to agree on what facts are, and then work out differences and solutions to problems based on those facts. I mean, when we can't start with a common set of this is the problem and this is what we need to address, it's almost impossible to make any kind of solution to it.
No, I hear you. Ron, my next place that I wanted to go, man, and again, another monumental concept, but one that needs to be addressed. You mentioned earlier quickly about the money in politics. You were talking about the lobbyists and how close they can be to, I think it was in reference to the Pentagon, but just in general, we understand, unless you've been sleeping under a rock, man, money has infiltrated politics, and there are a lot of politicians that are filling their pockets while compromising, at least their integrity, for the political system here. Let's address that next. In your book, are there any amendments that are proposed to address the money in politics, and what does that look like?
Yes. What we do is we propose that the amount that one can donate to a political campaign be limited to the income rate of low-income families, the poverty level, the federal poverty level. So, yeah, as an individual, you can donate that amount. Also, we say that no third-party groups, all these dark money groups and whatnot, they cannot issue ads that directly attack politicians. All they are able to do is to propose an issue and support it, or be against it. But they're not able to, carpet bomb a politician with negative ads. They are out of that business altogether. And the other thing is they have to have full disclosure of officers, founders, even members of these third-party groups, so to have a little transparency and who's putting out an ad, and maybe we can make some judgments about what their real intent is.
Yeah.
So that's a beginning, I think.
Well, listen, yeah, and it's a start. And I love the concept of limiting the amount that some individual or corporation can donate. What we see happening, and what we just saw happen in this previous presidential election, you look at billionaires, like particularly Elon Musk, and he himself donated tens of millions of dollars.
$250 million. 250 million.
Oh, my goodness. I didn't know the exact number, and it sounds even crazier when you
One
say
person.
that. One person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you look at, now that Trump has been elected president, you look at Elon Musk, and now he has a position that is in, he might not be a cabinet member, but you look at that, and I think that can also be viewed as a potential way of buying a way into politics. Donated hundreds of millions of dollars, and now he is going to be gifted through that. Now, again, it might not be directly correlated to it, but, again, it doesn't take a blind person to see that had a part to play. And now you're talking about nepotism. You're talking about this favoritism that is now given and being gifted to one of the wealthiest members of the world.
Yeah, he gets the government contract,
Mm-hmm.
and his competitors, all of a sudden, they don't get government contracts. And, by the way, maybe you have an IRS audit or some
exactly
regulatory action that you have to address that he doesn't have to address. I mean, we basically, it was essentially the Supreme Court that did it with their ruling about campaign finance and not having restrictions on it, which basically equivocated money and speech.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the system that we've set up. It almost invites corruption.
Oh, yeah.
Because these guys, even though they spend time in Washington doing legislation, good amount of their time is spent fundraising, on the phone, begging for money. And of course, if somebody gives you $100,000, you're going to feel obligated to take their call and listen to them and probably do what they want because you won't get it again.
Uh-huh.
So this is the system we set up, and we're not forcing change to it. We're not paying attention, essentially.
Yeah. And Ron, it's interesting. You talked about if someone gives you $100,000. Well, what do you think happens when someone gives you $250 million? It might be swayed in certain ways. My next issue, and again, people understand what we're doing here, and the reason why I'm jumping around to different topics in this way is because, like I mentioned, we could spend hours and hours talking on each one of these individual aspects. My goal here is to slightly encounter a lot of them to create conversation. Yeah. My goal here is once you've finished listening to this podcast, once you've purchased his book, Let's Get Focused, and you finished reading it, is to not have all the answers. It's to start generating conversations. If we can create more awareness and more engagement, we can start to dismantle these barriers because there is strength in numbers. And listen, they have the money. We have the numbers. It just takes It takes us to come together, man. We got to stand united. And this is key in all of it. Ron, another, again, conversation that I had recently was this ongoing or perpetual, I guess, campaign that we see happening nowadays. It almost seems as if this last presidential election, but again, it wasn't just this one because this has been going on for years now. These political officials, they start campaigning very, very early, which leads to, of course, the assistance of all this money being infused in the politics. But there is this ongoing campaign, and I've seen and heard things of people already starting to prepare for the next election and how that is going to look, and they're preparing for this already. So you mentioned term limits before. I think that's a great, great aspect. But also when it comes to the campaigning, is there anything that is suggested in the book or any insights that you can offer with regards maybe shortening the campaign run? And it's not going on for years. Maybe the campaign itself is limited to just a few months prior to the actual election. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't make a proposal for shortening the campaign. Mm-hmm. What I would say, though, is that this past primary season, we did make, at least the Democrats did make an an attempt to change the way we do things.
Yeah.
When you think about it, we get Iowa and New Hampshire first. Now, these are small, homogenous, non-diverse states, and people who don't do well in their primaries never get exposure to the rest of the country because they typically drop out.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did was go to South Carolina, which is a little bigger state, a little more diverse, and you get a little more opinion. My suggestion for the primary season would be that we divide the country maybe into 10 regions or so and have a regional primary so that there are more states than just one early on, so you can get a feel for what the message is how the message is connecting to diverse and various types of people, and that we should rotate which region goes first. For instance, it doesn't matter to us at all on the East Coast, but out west, water rights are a big deal.
Yeah.
Open ranges are a big deal. So it might be really beneficial to the country to have the western region go first and have those types of issues highlighted, things that we never think about, and you know, when we see legislation that addresses something, we say, oh, that's just a waste of money. Well, not really. Not if you live out there. It's not a waste of money. In any case, I do think, although I hate the length of the primary season, essentially a year, but and they start a year before that, you know, trying to make a name for themselves. I do hate that it takes so long, but on the other hand, the benefit is that if there's a weakness, if there's something going on, we have a good long runway to have somebody expose it, identify it. And that's the only thing I would say would be a benefit to having a longer season as opposed to a very short 3 or 4 month season. You know, if there's some fatal flaw that if you had known, you never would have voted for that person, it might not show up in a 3 or 4 month campaign period.
Yeah. Well, listen, you know, Ron, and it comes back to that engagement, right? It comes back to people getting involved, people being aware, to be able to recognize that, right? And to really understand it. People, like I said, this is a layered, this is an intricate conversation. You know, another topic point that we didn't have time to address today was the Electoral College, which that offers, I mean, that's another conversation in and of itself in terms of the disaster of the Electoral College.
What do you think would have happened this time if Trump had won in the Electoral College, but not won the popular vote? The question is, does the nation hold together? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. People truly resent that. I mean, and the person who wins goes into office with a stain against him. People think he's illegitimate because he didn't win the popular vote.
Right.
And there's no need for it. No need for it.
Ron, this has been an invigorating conversation, man. I really do mean that. Thank you for the wonderful words of wisdom. Thank you for writing this amazing book. But most importantly, thank you for being here with us to discuss it through people of distinction.
Thank you a lot for having me. I really appreciate and enjoyed being here. And everybody, remember that you are the hero that you're looking for. You can get involved and take the reins, make changes happen, and make them happen for the better.